What do you think?
Jesus man tired. Over the hill.
Well, I'm going to tell you something very interesting for me. When I was writing the book, that word jumped out at me because I never really knew what to call senior citizens. The word old, when you look it up in a thesaurus, you see a spectrum of words. And for me, it was very, very clear that you could see good words and bad words. You had, on the one hand, over the hill. I think I heard that. Done. Senile, which is a loaded term today for old people. Fossil. Creaky. And these are all in the book. And when I do this at Garden Village, I have some Garden Village friends here tonight. People would hiss and boo when I would say this. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you have mature, learned, venerable, wise.
All those words that we tend to think of when we think of Asian old people.
That's a good point.
I mean, in other cultures, people do tend to really revere the elderly in a way that in Western society.
Yeah.
That's been conditioned.
Right. And so, it's my goal is to focus on the right side. In the book, it's on the right side, so I always look at it that way. On that more positive side to aging, and that's really what I'd like to do. And that's what I've sought out to do with this project.
And it appears many people want to do that because the book was published October 1.
Yes.
And it's number 1 on the Amazon list of books about aging. So if you want to find out.
Trying to figure out a way that I could develop it. It wasn't happening. And the thing, the music business for me, it wasn't the kind of music that I really wanted to do at that point. So I was sort of winning myself out of that world. And I tried my hand at estate planning because I figured that would be the perfect marriage of law and my love for senior citizens. I always volunteered in this. I was in the book and learned that it was always something that's part of my life. Yes, you mentioned that. When I would try to read the tax code, it would hurt my brain. I just couldn't find sentences in there. It was just not my kind of work. But I remembered a moment when I was at a seminar and I was putting out with a fellow attorney, and an older gentleman in Leslie Nielsen came in. It wasn't the Naked Gun Leslie Nielsen. And he came up to me, poked me in the shoulder, and he said, "Harry, you know what today is?" And I said, "Leslie, I don't know." And he said, "Today is the anniversary of the invasion of Normandy." And I rushed up Omaha Beach. And then he proceeded to pull out a book that was, it looked like if you blew on it, it would disintegrate all over the floor. And he had pieces of shrapnel and netting, and he told me about that day. Meanwhile, 40 people had gathered around him while we're waiting to do the seminar about revocable living trusts. But we're listening to the stories, and as I looked around the room, this is what I saw. Everybody. And I had a moment where I thought, you know what? This is what I want to do. I don't want to count money for people. I don't want to do wills for them. I want to hear these stories. I had no idea how I was going to make money at it. I'm still trying to figure that out in some respects too. But I knew I wanted to do it. Went back to New York. Thank you. She's my agent too. I mentioned that spirit versus body to a friend. My father recently passed away a year and a half ago, and when he was fighting after he had an operation, a very close friend of the family, I'll take care of him towards the end, said, "What you're seeing here is spirit versus body." Your father was hanging on. He hung on to say goodbye to all of us. It was really a wonderful end of life experience. And I don't know what the biology is, Dr. Bauer, maybe you can tell me a little bit about this, but at some point we start, technically the body starts to deteriorate. It may be as early as 11 years old, if someone wants to say. But there's something else that kicks in as you grow and you go through life. Spirit, soul, wisdom, it's on the upswing. And I've learned that even though some people have aches and pains, and some people have a hard time, a lot of senior citizens aren't having such a hard time. They're still very active, they're still working, in their 70s, 80s, some people in their 90s. That spirit side of things is very strong. And these people are going strong to the finish line. And I found it very inspiring to hear those stories over and over again. It was good to hear. And I would point out, because some people might say, well, this is very Pollyannish and you're looking at this through rose-colored glasses or whatever. I did seek people who were active still, but not everybody in homes. There were people, in their personal homes, people who were in communities as well. So I balanced that off. Because again, we know about the negative side in many ways. I wanted to show that it's not all about being over the hill. I just want to tell everybody, I remember every single interview I've done. I remember every snack they served me. I'm not kidding, that's bordering an eating disorder, I'm sure. But the thing is, this woman, Geneva Carter, in Dallas, Texas, said she had a heart attack when she was 58 or so, maybe even younger, and the doctor recommended yoga to her. And in the middle of her interview, this woman stood up. She stood up and she says, watch this. And she actually bent from the waist down, put both of her palms, I can't do it, and then stood up. And she said, I've been doing yoga for 40 years. She was 91 or something, maybe 88. That's the kind of thing that I wanted to evoke.
So I think the message is more not that these people don't have any challenges, but that they choose to think about their lives and their challenges in maybe a different way than the younger people perceive them, thinking about them, and project them in their experience.
That's a good way. There is an underlying theme in this book that it's one of those things that I learned, and I certainly am an observer. I fear sometimes that we are losing the ability to have real conversations with one another. And I'm not just talking about senior citizens now, I'm talking about people. And I have. When I go back to New York, I lived in New York 20 years. I used to love riding the bus and the subway, but especially the bus. You would see things outside, you'd get into a conversation with someone next to you. If the Mets had a bad game, you could talk about that, whatever, and it was very nice. Now, everyone's got some sort of an earbud in their ear, or they're on the cell phone. And, listening to one, they got the BlackBerry, they're texting something, listening to someone, one side of a phone conversation is never better to listen to. And I see it in other people, and you're seeing a lot of writing about it today. There's a great movie out called Connected now that deals with this issue. There is no substitute to me for having a face-to-face, eye-to-eye conversation with another human being. So I chose senior citizens. That's my thing. I love that. It could be anybody. So to sit with another human being and look them in the eye, and I'm looking even out here, that is special to me. And so at the very end of the book, I say there's gold in them dark hills, because I'm trying to say to people, go out and engage a senior citizen. Go out and have a conversation with anybody if you find that opportunity. Get your head out of the little thing. I mean, I have it, and I use it, and I catch myself getting caught up in it. But that's a sort of an ancillary lesson that I've learned.
How did you find the people that you interviewed?
There's no science to this. This was... Celebrities are one thing. They were ahead with agents and publicists and lawyers, and they were just...
They're a bunch of celebrities.
That was hard.
They're a bunch of little.
Right. So this book is... If you know Studs Terkel and his work, this is very similar to Studs Terkel work. I loved his work. And I spoke to Studs 2 or 3 times when I was doing this book. But there was nothing special. If I was on line at Price Chopper and I met somebody, 2 weeks later I'm interviewing them. I was taking a super shuttle in New York, and there was a woman, Gail Johnson. 3 weeks later I'm in her brownstone interviewing her. I would meet people anywhere. Somebody had an aunt or a grandmother. I wanted to meet her. That's how it happened. Sometimes I plugged into a community like Garden Village, and there were, Mary Jane, who's a good friend of mine, who's the activity director there. Is that you laughing? She would introduce me to 4 or 5, and this gets back to your other point, of her most vibrant people in the community. And that's how I got those interviews.
And when you decided to do this, let's start with work and career. We'll start with somebody who everybody probably knows, and that would be Mr. Walt Bodie, who you interviewed some years ago, and I think everybody in Kansas City knows about his long and vital career when he contributed to broadcast news. And there's a funny story about your interview with him. Why don't you talk about it?
Yeah. I was on the show with Laura, and I saw him after the show, and I said, "Can I interview you?" So I went over to his apartment, which is not far from here, and you all know Walt Bodine. I didn't really know him that well.
Well, maybe, I mean, I don't know how many people know, but he is wheelchair bound and he's blind. Totally blind.
Right. So I'm in his apartment. This was just as I'm introduced to him, and I was going to set up a video camera to interview him. And as he comes out of a room, he went to the left, which was headed out the door up to his apartment. And I was ready to say, I had to stop him because I was setting up over here. And he caught himself. And as he turned to me and he said, it's a good thing I caught that, Harry, because if I had gotten that in that direction, it would have taken me 250,000 miles to get to you. And I realized I am in for a treat, and I was in for a treat. I mean, I ran 2 or 3 tapes. I was using them. He has so many stories. I think we did a calculation and it's interviewed something like 92,000 people in his career. We figured it out together. Is that possible? I guess.
Yeah, he's done a lot of different shows.
Yeah.